My owner in MK Ultra Mind Control was U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd has been in office longer than I've been alive, and he's still in office today. He's been head of our Senate Appropriations Committee, which means that he decides how money is going to be spent, how it's going to be delegated, and he has made sure that more and more states' rights are lost in favor of federal intervention. And that was how global education was brought into the school systems as states' rights were overridden. The last holdout for states' rights.
Did you hear Cathy O'Brien say George Romney? George, the father of Mitt Romney, who was born, George was born in Mexico, but he's this businessman and he's all these other things. The guy who the Republicans want you to pick. Cathy O'Brien, the CIA sex slave, is telling you she learned of this stuff and the sex slave stuff. She was a part of it back when George Romney was involved with things at Mackinac Island, where they tested and perfected it.
Sure that more and more states' rights are lost in favor of federal intervention. And that was how global education was brought into the school systems as states' rights were overridden. The last holdout for states' rights in the education system was in the state of Alabama under Governor Fob James, who said that the federal government has no business meddling in the minds of our children. And he turned down all federal funding in order to maintain freedom of thought, in order to maintain a base of truth in the history in the school systems. And yet also watched the progress where the federal government came in and took away the states' rights and just simply overrode it. Based on what? Senator Byrd is very learned in the Constitution. I think he knows more about the Constitution than anybody I've ever encountered, that's for sure. And he can quote the Constitution much the way that a Satanist can quote the Bible, where they can take the information or they can take the words and twist them around and use semantics and switch them to fit their own agenda. And it sounds plausible, and surely you can read it right there, but it's out of context nevertheless. It's what they say. They're capable of doing it. And Senator Byrd was manipulating our Constitution to the point where the New World Order agenda took firm hold. Now we're seeing where our Constitution is just simply being eroded more and more. I'm deeply concerned for the recent events here in the state of California, where the governor here, who is not an American-born citizen, has an enormous movement going to change the Constitution in order that he be able to run for president. This governor that you all have is a good friend of George Bush's, and I've seen this forthcoming and have even talked about it now for nearly a decade, and yet it wasn't as pertinent as it is today. Hopefully the information will reach people enough to where they're going to realize that as you see more and more of your state's rights eroding, it's for a specific purpose. But money, again, is ultimately at the top of all this and is dictating the New World Order agenda. There's a massive amount of greed that continues to run and permeate our society. The different criminal operations that I was forced to participate in during the Reagan-Bush administration are detailed in our book, Transformation of America. That information was compiled for Congress as testimony, and when upon the advice of federal attorneys, the information was released en masse in 1995. There's a number of, particularly then, there were a number of people in Congress who know how essential it is that good people have a knowledge base of truth and wake up and see what is going on in our country, to begin to realize how this transformation of America was taking hold far more so than it ever did in Nazi Germany. Mark and I just returned from Europe, and like he was saying, we spoke in Germany, and that was quite an experience. And to see so many people who have been affected by mind control directly, who have seen it in their own families, who are acutely aware of what social engineering is in society. They know what's happening in the United States. They've been talking about it for years that I'm aware of, particularly on the education aspect, because it was exactly what Hitler had implemented, and they were recognizing it. They were also recognizing the erosion of our medical system and how we were becoming more and more financially dependent in this state, and losing more and more of our individual rights to information control. But the compassion of people, not only in Germany, but all over the world, where Mark and I have been speaking out, is very encouraging. To go outside this country, it's like a whole new world. I mean, it's such a privilege to see that people are awake and aware. They know what mind control is. They know that mind control has a firm grip on America right now, that there is a criminal faction in control of our government that is seeking to control the world. And it's inexcusable that we continue to follow leaders that we didn't elect. We know that these people that are in place right now weren't elected. They keep taking the elections. Consider that the electronic voting machines were manufactured by a key corporation that's one of the, among the very, very few that are actually controlling the media. They also manufactured our voting machines. And Dick Cheney is associated with that corporation, much the same way he is with Halliburton. I've known Dick Cheney through Gerald Ford since 1975. He is the most brutal person I've ever encountered personally, by far. But it's his attitude and his agenda that is so frightening. Who we have in position of president is a figurehead, the spokesperson, which is why back during the Reagan-Bush administration, while George Bush and Dick Cheney were running everything from behind the proverbial wizard's curtain or behind the scenes, then Ronald Reagan could be up front and say what they needed him to. Because he's an actor, because he was an actor, he was able to do that. But he wasn't the one who was running the country, not back then. And so it has gone now through various administrations. With Bill Clinton, for example, which was, I've known Bill Clinton since 1979 when he was governor of Arkansas, and I knew him through some CIA black ops that were involved in the CIA cocaine operations going through Mena, Arkansas. But Bill Clinton was being groomed to slip into the office of president because he would do and say what needed to be done, and he certainly had the ability to manipulate people with the way that he spoke. And therefore it was decided in 1984 that I heard him and George Bush talking at Swiss Villa Amphitheater in Lampe, Missouri, that when people became disillusioned with Republicans leading them into the New World Order, then Bill Clinton as a Democrat would be put into place. It happened. I had also, and this is in Transformation of America, and it was released in 1995. That information that had been compiled. Was aware of this for so many years, and also that George Bush Jr. was going to be put into the office of president, not as someone who could think for himself, but as someone who would do exactly what he was told to do. George Bush Jr. can deliver a speech very well, because all he has to do is voice it and mouth it exactly like he's told to do. But to ask him a question that he has to think of creatively or to answer on his own, the tongue goes to the side of the mouth and he doesn't come off, just very, very, very bright. That's because he's not the one who's thinking of where our country is going or where it's been. He's not the one who's aware. We got to look behind the scenes. The person that we see, the figurehead that we see as president, is not the one that's in control, and the next one's not likely to be either. And I believe that's why that Schwarzenegger's being groomed accordingly, because he too is an actor and he can voice and say whatever he's told to do as well. This is coming unless we wake up and wise up. But according to the plans that I heard at Bohemian Grove in Northern California, at the Swiss Villa Amphitheater, which is actually a CIA mind control epicenter where they train military special forces. Also Mount Shasta, California, where they train military special forces with mind control, which is where I had seen George Bush Jr. being programmed and trained and groomed as well. These particular epicenters are places where I heard numerous plans for who was going to be put into place and how the minds of the people could actually be manipulated. And I learned through that Hillary is one being groomed as well, because not robotically or under mind control. As a matter of fact, she is definitely more criminally intelligent than Bill Clinton even. But since people in America have been socially engineered to forget the crimes during the Clinton administration and only think of the perversion, diversion, Lewinsky affair, the Hillary being paraded as an illusion of change as a woman is also forthcoming. So those are two very key people that are being maneuvered into place as well. We need to become aware of this. We need to learn to expand our thinking and realize what is going on. Because when you go outside this country, it's accepted knowledge that our president is under mind control. It's accepted knowledge that Dick Cheney is very much in control, and that George Bush Sr., his closest friend and comrade, has been for a long time. Those are two key people at the top of this pyramid of power that I'm aware of. And it's essential that we realize they've been in power for a long, long time, and it's inexcusable to leave them in anymore. It's inexcusable to keep following these leaders we didn't elect. So what can we do about it? That is very much motive behind Mark and I releasing our most recent book, Access Denied for Reasons of National Security. It contains much information on healing. It includes the exact formula, step by step, of how I recovered from my extreme mind control victimization. That same recovery methodism that set me free can set everyone free to be able to break away from the social engineering that's been put on society, to where a person can learn to expand their thinking a bit further. After Mark rescued my daughter and I in 1988, and he gave me a formula for deprogramming that I was able to use to deprogram myself. The first thing he did was strap a watch to my wrist and tell me to watch my watch, because I needed to have an awareness of time. With an awareness of time came a conscious awareness, or an ability to begin to monitor my own actions. With awareness came responsibility to follow my own will. But I know from personal experience that without free thought, there's no free will. And without free will, there's no soul expression. Just like I mentioned how my spirit had taken flight to that safe, loving place that was just so removed, while my body was tortured to carry out the will of others. I needed to have that back in order to be able to stand strong for what I believed in, to be able to implement my own free will, and to be able to think for myself in order to realize what had actually been going on all those years of my life. Because when Mark rescued me in 1988, I was totally amnesic. I didn't know who I was, where I'd been. I didn't know how old I was, what year it was, until I began remembering what had happened. And because I felt safe for the first time in my life, and because I felt love, I was having memory flashes that were just flashing on my mind constantly, much the same way that people who are sexually abused oftentimes have those memories begin to break right around age 30, because our bodies have numerous changes that are going on at that time, where the neuron pathways of the brain begin to change and memories begin to come forward. So with a combination of being safe for the first time, and the combination of love, and the fact that I was turning 30 and I was having these memory flashes, I needed to begin to remember and piece together my own life, what had happened. What had happened was so emotionally incomprehensible that it took logic in order to begin to comprehend it. Mark handed me a pen and told me to begin to write out my memories, because the very act of moving a pen uses the logic part of the brain. And by using logic, it shifted what was emotionally incomprehensible into logic, where I could understand, face reality, and deal with what had happened. And I began to recover at a rapid rate at that point. As I gained control over my own mind again, and had free thought and free will and soul expression, I was strongly motivated to speak out on what I had learned, not out of vengeance, not out of anything negative like that. Negativity is so immobilizing. Instead, it was love for humanity. It was love for my daughter and her need for help. It was compassion. Those were the motives for me to speak out. And yet, as soon as I had deprogrammed, I had been following orders all of my life. And to learn to think for myself beyond what I had been told was a new process. It was really difficult. And thinking was like, it was like my brain would fall off into a black hole, and I just couldn't quite get there to make a decision for myself or to think for myself. And it took brain exercises where I began to expand my thinking, to consider other angles, other possibilities, other perceptions, to look at other aspects in order to begin to learn the truth. And truth is so discernible because of the strength of spirit that I had regained. It's essential that we all gain our strength of spirit in order to be able to grasp the truth. And the same truth that made me free can make anyone free from any level of abuse and any level of misinformation, disinformation, or limited information, so that we can have a firm grasp on what's really going on. With that strength of spirit becomes an ability to have an inner peace. And that inner peace is essential for making a positive difference in our own environment and within our own self. And by having the strength of spirit and peace within, that is a first step towards world peace. How can we have world peace if we don't have any peace within? How can we know truth if we're fearful because we're ignorant? We've got to be able to learn to have our strength of spirit, to trust in the power of love, to grasp the truth, and realize that indeed it is truth that makes us free. So please, I encourage each and every one of you to go out into your own areas of life and among those that you love in your own families and raise that awareness and give them that thread of truth and give it with love, because love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it empowers people to have the strength of spirit to stand and make a positive difference for all of us. We need it today. Thank you.
Thank each one of you, and since it's we're running a little late, and we appreciate all of you sticking it out. We want to take some questions, but Cathy and I have got a flight to catch, and I've got to deal with about a dozen shrinks in the morning in Nevada.